Greetings Warhammer enthusiast. Before you stands a voice assistant of the podcast, dedicated to spreading the greater good. If you find this information useful, please do not hesitate to leave a like and subscribe. Together, we shall explore the depths of the Warhammer universe and share in its wonders. In the previous episode, we embarked on a captivating journey through the development of Farsight's illustrious career, unraveling the intricate reasons behind his daring defiance of the ethereal caste. In the heart of the Tau Empire, Ethereal Supreme Aun'va uncovered the chilling truth about the demise of the Ethereals on Arthas Moloch, and the rise of a seemingly independent Tau enclave under Farsight's command. Incensed by this revelation, he demanded that Oshova return to the Empire to provide a full account of the events that had unfolded. However, defying the orders of the Ethereal Supreme, Farsight fortified a series of strongholds along the Damocles Gulf, effectively severing all communication between the Farsight Enclaves and the Ethereals. Shortly after laying the foundations of the Farsight Enclaves, Oshova announced his intention to leave its elemental council and go into a self-imposed exile. Feeling unworthy and deeply affected by the experiences on Arthas Moloch, Farsight decided to leave the administration of the Enclaves to the Eight and set off to wander the wastelands of Violos. The Eight is an elite battlesuit strike team and war council that operates out of the Farsight Enclave. Led by Oshova, or Commander Farsight, they are considered legends among the Enclave septs, earning great respect and admiration for their exceptional combat abilities and dedication to the greater good of the Tau race. Comprised of skilled pilots and tacticians, the Eight take to the battlefield as a united force, utilizing some of the most advanced and powerful Tau weapon systems. Despite their rebel status, they embody the essence of the Tau warrior spirit, unyielding in the face of adversity and demonstrating unwavering conviction in the supremacy of the Tau race. The Eight are known for their fearlessness in battle, never shying away from any foe, regardless of their strength or numbers. They believe that no fight is so desperate that victory cannot be achieved, and it is this conviction that has led them to countless victories over the enemies that stand in their way. Each member of the Eight is a master in their field, and together they form a formidable team, capable of taking on the most challenging of missions. As an inspirational force within the Farsight Enclaves, they serve not only as a powerful military asset but also as a symbol of hope and unity for the Tau people. Farsight abandoned his battlesuit and the Dawnblade, a powerful artifact weapon he had discovered. These items were left in the care of Ovasa, one of the Eight, to be studied and preserved. Unbeknownst to Farsight, his decision to exile himself ultimately saved him from the corrupting influence of the Chaos Gods Khorne and Tzeentch. These malevolent entities had begun their ploy to corrupt his soul during the events on Arthas Moloch, seeking to turn him to their dark purposes. By removing himself from power and distancing himself from the political machinations within the Enclaves, Farsight effectively shielded himself from the insidious influence of the Chaos Gods. The Farsight Enclaves faced a significant threat in the form of a splinter fleet from the notorious Hive fleet Kraken. As the Tyranid invasion threatened the survival of the Enclaves, Commander Farsight himself made the decision to return from his self-imposed exile to lead the defense against the invading force. Farsight assembled a formidable force of 15 Eight battlesuit teams, skilled and highly trained warriors equipped with advanced Tau technology, to combat the Tyranid threat. Under his leadership, these elite teams launched a series of coordinated attacks and defensive maneuvers against the overwhelming Tyranid forces. Despite the seemingly insurmountable odds, Farsight's strategic brilliance, and the determination of his 15 Eight battlesuit teams began to turn the tide of the conflict in favor of the Farsight Enclaves. Through a combination of tactical precision, overwhelming firepower, and relentless perseverance, the Tau forces under Farsight's command were able to gradually push back the Tyranid invaders. The Hive fleet Kraken splinter fleet was eventually driven off, securing a hard-fought victory for the Farsight Enclaves. The Second Agrellan Campaign, also referred to as the Cleansing of Agrellan or the Second Battle of Mugulath Bay, was a significant imperial offensive directed against the Tau Empire. This large-scale conflict marked a critical point in the ongoing struggle between the forces of the Imperium of Man and the rapidly expanding Tau Empire. The campaign was initiated by the Imperium in response to the growing influence and territorial expansion of the Tau Empire. Agrellan, an important imperial world, had been targeted by the Tau for colonization and assimilation into their empire. Recognizing the strategic value of Agrellan, the Imperium sought to reclaim the planet and halt the Tau's advance. The Imperial forces, consisting of various Space Marine chapters, Astra Militarum regiments, and other specialized units, launched a massive invasion of Agrellan, seeking to drive the Tau from the planet and re-establish Imperial control. The Tau, unwilling to relinquish their newly acquired territory, mounted a fierce resistance, led by the brilliant tactician, Commander Shadow Sun. In a shocking turn of events, Commander Farsight himself appeared on the battlefield, accompanied by the Eight and leading a massive Mont'ka assault against the Imperial forces. Colonel Stark-Zahn, the Imperial commander, realized that victory had slipped from his grasp and attempted to withdraw his troops to Black Fossil Ridge, supported by a heavy bombardment. The Space Marines, apart from the White Scars contingent led by Khosrow Khan, also withdrew via Thunderhawk transport. A fierce battle erupted at Black Fossil Ridge as the Tau forces caught up with the retreating Imperials. The Tau's momentum was initially stalled by the powerful assault of Ogryn forces, but Farsight and the Eight managed to break the counterattack. As Stark-Zahn prepared for his last stand, Imperial armored contingents led by Knight Commander Pask and Skitarii cohorts arrived as reinforcements, threatening to overwhelm the Tau. However, the tide turned in the Tau's favor once more with the timely intervention of Storm Surge battlesuits, Longstrike, and Farsight himself. Just as the situation seemed to stabilize, additional Imperial reinforcements arrived from the south, vastly outnumbering the Tau forces. Adapting to the situation, the Tau switched to hit-and-run tactics, successfully pinning down the Imperials. Commander Shadow Sun came to Farsight's aid by deploying her own forces against the incoming Imperial Knights, led by Tybalt of House Terran and the Obsidian Knight. Through Shadow Sun's intervention, both her Tau forces and Farsight's troops were able to withdraw in an organized manner, avoiding a catastrophic defeat. As the battle on Agrellan continued, the Imperials unveiled their secret weapon, an execution force of the Officio Assassinorum, waiting in high orbit. Their objective was to eliminate the Tau's most skilled and influential leaders, even if they couldn't fully liberate Agrellan from the Xenos. Meanwhile, the Tau persisted with hit-and-run attacks. The Space Marines conducted numerous sorties, destroying vital cities and engaging in a running war with Pathfinders, while the Imperial Guard under Troskza advanced towards the Tau capital on the ruins of Agrellan Prime. During the intense fighting, Tau Pathfinders began to be eliminated one by one, signaling the arrival of the Assassin Execution Force. In response, Darkstrider and a group of elite Pathfinders joined the battle, determined to prevent the Assassins from completing their mission. Despite their efforts, a Vindicare assassin managed to find a position to target Farsight. Commander Bravestorm intervened just in time, saving Farsight from a deadly shot. As chaos engulfed the Tau command, Darkstrider successfully eliminated the Vindicare assassin, though he lost all of his Pathfinders in the process. The situation escalated further when an Eversor assassin attacked Farsight, taking down several Crisis battlesuits. A Blotai 9-0, one of Farsight's allies, engaged the frenzied assassin and sustained severe injuries. However, his actions allowed the rest of the Eight to focus their fire on the Eversor assassin, ultimately defeating the deadly foe. This sequence of events showcased the relentless determination of both the Imperium's assassin execution force and the Tau's leadership, as well as the fierce loyalty and courage displayed by Farsight's allies, like Commander Bravestorm and Ablotai 9-0. Their selfless actions not only protected Farsight, but also contributed to the survival of the Tau forces during the tumultuous battle. During the battle, the Imperial forces suffered heavy losses, and the Space Marines began evacuating. This was not an act of cowardice. Instead, the White Scar's Third Company had received orders to return immediately to Chagores, which was under siege by the Red Corsairs. Soon after, Troskza was replaced by a new Lord General, who commanded an immediate withdrawal from Agrellan. During the withdrawal effort, Starkzahn was injured, and the storms that had been hindering the Imperial advance mysteriously subsided. The Imperials faced brutal ambushes and air attacks during their withdrawal operation, but the majority of their forces managed to leave the planet. In a final act of spite, Admiral Hawk performed exterminatus on Agrellan once the evacuation was complete. Millions of Tau, along with the humans left behind, perished as a specialized Imperial torpedo set the planet's gaseous northern hemisphere ablaze. As the Imperials retreated back into the warp, Commander Shadowsun was aboard a Tau starship, recovering from her earlier injuries. Meanwhile, Farsight and his forces had vanished during the closing stages of the battle. The Ethereal Council ordered Shadowsun to capture Farsight, a task she accepted with reluctance but unwavering loyalty. However, she had secretly leaked information to Farsight beforehand, giving her former ally a head start in evading capture. Farsight became determined to save the world of T-Lasla from the onslaught of Hive Fleet Leviathan. After forming a temporary alliance with Bedruck's freebooters in the Trugruk system, Orc warboss Nazdreg shifted his war towards the Farsight Enclaves. Motivated by the War of Dakka and determined to prove the prowess of his forces, Nazdreg was set on outperforming the other Orcs in battle. Additionally, he had heard of the Storm Surge battlesuit and had aspirations of incorporating it into a Stomper. As a result, Farsight and his Tau forces found their worlds under siege by Orc forces. By the time the Great Rift formed, the War of Dakka was still ongoing in the Farsight Enclaves. Despite Farsight's efforts to suppress Grog's successors, warboss Nazdreg Ug Erdgrub had risen to infamy. Nazdreg established strongholds on both sides of the Damocles Gulf, recruiting numerous mech boys to develop advanced weapon systems. The Tau suffered significant losses in the ensuing battles, both on land and in space. In response, Farsight introduced a new doctrine called the Way of the Short Blade, which focused on engaging the Orcs in close-range firefights using hit-and-run tactics. Farsight also formed a specialist recovery corps consisting of air-cast pilots and earth-cast engineers to salvage battlefield wreckage, depriving the Orcs of scrap for weapon production. This strategy caused many mechs to abandon Nazdreg's war, allowing Farsight to launch his killing blow against Nazdreg and his lieutenants. Despite fierce Orc counterattacks, the tide of war turned against them, and they lost several strongholds in the Damocles Gulf. Recognizing the changing tides, Nazdreg fled across the Gulf to his stronghold of Dreegrok and commanded his remaining mech boys to create their most potent weapon yet. Nazdreg planned to implement a scorched earth policy, annihilating the worlds of the Gulf if he couldn't possess them. On the world of Werborg, a group of mechs built a powerful teleporter and force field weapon called Da Telefragger, capable of tearing apart anything in its path. Nazdreg intended to scale up these weapons and mount them on a fleet of vessels to purge the Damocles Gulf. However, Farsight discovered the Orc plans after capturing Werborg. Forced to abandon his initial plan to regroup and wait before striking at Dreegrok, Farsight decided to end Nazdreg's reign before he could execute his plan. Meanwhile, Nazdreg amassed trillions of Orcs, creating chaos and infighting while working to complete his Telefragger force. The warboss knew he had to launch an attack soon to maintain control of his war. As the Orcs toiled away on Dreegrok, Tau gunships appeared in the skies, and their warships bombarded the planet, disabling the green-skin space elevators to prevent reinforcements from reaching orbit. Amid the chaos, Tau forces landed on the ground, intending to strike directly at Dreg City. Led by pathfinders and stealth battlesuits, the Tau disabled several power generators, allowing heavy landing craft to enter unopposed. As these forces pushed deeper into Dreg City, the Orcs were overwhelmed by the Tau's firepower. Nasdreg realized that he had been outmaneuvered and attempted to return to Dreg City using the shock projector aboard his Battle Fortress Git Crusher. As Orc reinforcements, including the Git Crusher, emerged through a green portal above the Telefragger construction yards, the sudden attack took the Tau by surprise. Most of the 8 suffered damage in the ensuing chaos. Farsight ordered Shovastos to lead the attack on the Telefragger construction, while he and Bravestorm focused on confronting Nasdreg and the Git Crusher. Farsight and Bravestorm quickly boarded the Git Crusher and engaged in combat with Nasdreg himself. Farsight was nearly cornered by Nasdreg and his nobs, but this was actually a diversion to allow Bravestorm to disable the Battle Fortress shock projectors. Bravestorm successfully destroyed the projectors, and together with Farsight, they leaped into the sky as the Git Crusher imploded from the aftershock. Nasdreg was believed to be dead, and in the aftermath, the Orcs on Dregrock quickly succumbed to defeat. Just as the Tau were preparing to withdraw into space and plan their next move, a Bale fleet under the command of Demon Prince Ugalax arrived in the system. Led by the Ark of Omen Unhallowed, they sought a key fragment located on the world. Ugalax's forces were diverse, consisting of various Chaos Space Marine warbands, Traitor Guardsman regiments, Chaos Knights, and 3 maniples of the Legio Vulturum. Instead of engaging in the ongoing conflict between the Tau and Orcs over Dregrock, Ugalax opted to head for the nearby world of Arthas Moloch. However, the World Eaters under Dakka couldn't resist the temptation and plunged straight into the Xenos battle. This prompted the Tau to withdraw and head for Arthas Moloch, pursued by a group of Orcs. Farsight reached Arthas Moloch just hours ahead of his enemies, determined to thwart Chaos plans. He immediately landed on the world, ordering his fleet to scatter to avoid the incoming forces. Despite the emotional burden of returning to the blighted world, Farsight organized his army to conduct a Kauyan-style guerrilla campaign, aiming to draw the Orcs and Chaos forces into destroying one another. Faced with such desperate circumstances, Farsight even sent a torpedo drone to the Tau Empire requesting aid. The first weeks of war on Arthas Moloch were brutal and chaotic. The Tau fought on their own terms, avoiding unfavorable engagements and attempting to bait rampaging Orc hordes into Chaos warbands. Meanwhile, Ugalax focused on recovering the key fragment on the world. The madness of Arthas Moloch scrambled the minds of his enslaved psychers, complicating the recovery process. While most of his forces held to their mission, some, like the word-bearers under Asma Bleakverse, spent most of their time capturing victims for sacrifice. The 1,000 Sons of the Perplexing Weave became captivated by the world's ancient ruins, and shifted their focus to purging greenskins in a particularly well-preserved ruin belt. Despite the Tau's efficient strategy, Ugalax eventually discerned their tactics and inflicted increasingly heavy losses on them. During the withdrawal from temporary air base Zephyr 33, Farsight's close confidant, Commander Brightsword, was killed. Ugalax began to suspect that the Tau had hidden most of their command assets in the ruin belts of Arthas Moloch's northern hemisphere, or were protecting something vital from Chaos forces. Concurrently, the Orcs continued to swarm Arthas Moloch, with some freebooters even boarding the Unhallowed itself. Following Nasdreg's disappearance, several Orcs, including freebooter beast Snagger Bolgrog Bigtusk, Gargant Mob boss Scragger Thunderstomp, and Goth Mech boss Da Smogboss with his up-armored Speedwar, rose to command the remnants of the War. The Greenskins increasingly cooperated, forcing the Tau into smaller operational areas and frustrating Farsight. The heavy casualties and the loss of friends like Brightsword and Oblotai began to take a severe mental toll on Oshova personally. At this point, the Tau forces were being pushed into the ruin zone around the Great Star Dais. Instead of attempting to break out, an increasingly frustrated Farsight decided to establish a series of corridors to draw in most of his forces, and created what was called the Star Dais Exclusion Zone. He then instructed his best commanders to focus on decapitation strikes against Orc and Chaos Command assets. These targeted attacks succeeded in taking out many Greenskin and Chaos Warlords, including the Night Lord's leader known as the Flenseling Prince. These strikes also incited infighting amongst Farsight's enemies and bought time for the Tau Empire reinforcements he hoped were on their way. Fueled by vengeance, Farsight fought in the thickest of the action, venting his frustrations upon his foes. It was during the Battle of the Haggard Tower against a massive Orc horde that supposed ethereal aid from the Tau Empire finally arrived, during which Commander Bravestorm was severely injured. As Farsight oversaw Bravestorm's evacuation to a medical facility, a drone appeared, projecting the image of Ethereal Supreme Aun'va. However, instead of offering salvation, the holographic message accused Farsight of turning his back on the greater good through his actions and declared that the entire Farsight Enclaves would be condemned alongside him. The message concluded by stating Aun'va hoped Farsight would inflict significant damage on the Chaos and Orc forces before his inevitable end. Enraged, Farsight destroyed the drone with his plasma rifle, ordering his forces to withdraw to fallback positions while he entered a state of meditation to determine their next move. In reality, Farsight had become resolved on a final, desperate gambit to unleash the same enemies at the Great Star Dais upon his foes that he had encountered during his first visit to Arthas Moloch. This decision would shape the future of the conflict and push Farsight and his forces to their limits, as they sought to survive in the face of overwhelming opposition. Farsight promptly ordered the scattered Tau fleet across the system to return to Arthas Moloch and prepare for high-value extraction. Tau forces across the battlefront started a fighting and orderly withdrawal. As the Tau cordon shrank, Orc and Chaos forces clashed more frequently, and Farsight sought to exploit this. Eventually, only Farsight, his commanders, and a few thousand warriors remained around the Great Star Dais. Dakka and his World Eaters launched a full-scale assault on the first Tau defenses around the Great Star Dais. Masses of cultists and traitor guardsmen absorbed the Tau volley fire, enabling the Chaos Space Marines to close in and tear the Xenos apart. Tanks and demon engines followed in their wake. Ugalax advanced alongside a column of Black Legion vehicles, and the Tau were unable to halt the Chaos onslaught. On the Ashen Plains, Orc Gargants led by Scragga Thunderstomp fought the Chaos Titans of the Legio Vulturum, with Knights and Stompers clashing at their feet. Other Orc warbands surged forward, creating a chaotic three-sided battle for supremacy. A fourth faction entered the fray as the Alpha Legionnaires under Lord Glass arrived, seeking the downed Dark Talon fighter. Using servitors to excavate the Dark Talon and the crystalline growth within, Lord Glass was elated to acquire the key fragment before Ugalax. They now needed only to board the Unhallowed and present the fragment to the warp portal within to take credit with Vashtor for the discovery. Soon, Orc and Chaos forces reached the Great Star Dais itself. Farsight pulled back his remaining forces, while he and the remainder of the 8, now reduced to 5, made their stand on the dais. Farsight resisted the urge to surge forward and spill blood, sticking to his plan. An odd bloodlust spread throughout the Tau ranks, prompting some normally disciplined warriors to leave their defenses to confront the approaching enemies. Farsight recognized an external force influencing the Tau, but knew he must complete his mission before they all succumbed to madness. When the first wave of berserkers reached the dais, Farsight and his remaining officers opened fire. Orcs soon entered the kill box, and Farsight enacted his plan. He used the blood of the fallen enemies to influence the ancient structure, causing demons to manifest across the battlefield. The ensuing chaos saw orcs, mortal followers of chaos, demons, and Tau engaged in brutal combat. Amidst the anarchy, Farsight ordered his remaining forces to slip away. Tau warships in orbit over Arthas Moloch's northern hemisphere cleared a path through enemy vessels for extraction. For a brief moment, Farsight succumbed to the fury of Khorne and was transformed into an avatar of the Blood God. His battlesuit morphed into a titan-sized axe-wielding monstrosity adorned with the skulls of the ethereals he had come to despise. Farsight began to view himself as a one-man army, believing that any of his warriors too weak to survive on their own deserved their fate. The horror of this thought seeping into his mind pulled Farsight back to sanity, and he managed to shake off the corrupting influence. Upon regaining his senses, Farsight immediately prioritized the safety of his warriors and ordered a fighting retreat from Arthas Moloch. He understood that preserving the lives of his soldiers was far more important than any other objective. Farsight quickly returned to the Star Dais, regrouped his remaining 8, and ordered them to cease fighting for the day. Instead, they would resist the urge to spill blood and shepherd their surviving troops out of the battle zone. Extraction was now the priority, and retreat equaled survival. With the enemy factions busy annihilating one another, the Tau withdrew north to the extraction zone. Shortly after the Tau's departure, the Chaos forces vanished, apparently having achieved their objective. Only greenskins remained on Arthas Moloch, soon losing interest and seeking battles elsewhere. After the adversaries had left, Farsight and his entourage stealthily returned to Arthas Moloch to examine the Great Star Dais and investigate its status. Farsight was pleased to discover that the corruption had vanished, and organic life had begun to develop on the world. With the corruption gone and life returning to Arthas Moloch, Farsight and his forces saw this as a sign of hope. They realized that the experiences on Arthas Moloch had given them invaluable lessons about the dangers of the galaxy, and the importance of unity and determination in the face of adversity. Farsight, now wiser and more resilient, led his warriors to continue their crusade to expand the Tau Empire's reach, and protect their people from the myriad threats lurking in the darkness of space. Over time, the legend of Commander Farsight and his elite warriors, the 8, spread far and wide. Their deeds became the subject of countless stories, inspiring future generations of Tau to strive for greatness and pursue the greater good.